we have another collaboration with Games Night Viz for this week's Preppin data, so thanks very much Will for the challenge, and it's using some of my favourite data, which is Pokémon data. So let's get started. We start off with the stats input, and we want to remove a few fields because we're not going to use them as part of this challenge, and so I've chosen to remove those in the input step by simply unticking those fields. Then if we take a look at this data, we can see that we've got names of each Pokemon, information about their stats, and a couple more fields giving a bit more information. So we want to pivot all these 6 fields which are about the stats into one field. So we use a columns to rows pivot, and we simply pick up and drag any fields that we want to be pivoted into this orange pivot one values area. Then we just rename the fields, so this combat factors for all of those stats and the values associated with them. Okay, then we're starting off with this second input, so our Pokemon evolutions. So this tells us how a Pokemon evolves. So we go from Bulbasaur to Ivysaur to Venusaur, for example, so that's stage 1, 2, and 3. And you can see, for example, with Rattata and Raticate, we get a null in the stage 3 because it doesn't have another evolution after that. And what we now want to do is we want to supplement this data set, so our orange flow, and we want to add on the combat values for each of these stages. So I want my stage 1 values to appear in a column here, I want my stage 2 values to appear in a column here, and my stage 3 values to appear in a column here. So we'll use 3 different joins in order to achieve that. So first of all, we'll join on our name to our stage 1, and you'll see that all of our rows from our orange flow, they come through. There's nothing being excluded, so we're happy with that. And then we just want to do some renaming. So we want to rename this values field that we have here to be our stage 1 values before we do our next join. So I could have just renamed that normally, but I wanted to show you the rename fields option that's up here, where you can do it a bit more dynamically to add a prefix on, and this is our stage 1 values. Okay, this is more useful obviously if you're renaming multiple fields at a time, but I thought that there were multiple fields I'd need to rename when I was initially working through this challenge, but I was just exploring this functionality and wanted to show it off in the solution too. Okay, so it always changes it to then just show the field names, so I just need to change back to my profile pane by these buttons up here. So then I want to join on the stage 2 values. So this time I not only need to join stage 2 on name, but I need to join the combat factors field so that all of those HP, attack and defense, they will line up. And we're still doing an inner join, and the reason for that is because we want any Pokemon that doesn't evolve to drop out. So if a Pokemon that only has a value in stage 1 and it has nulls in both stage 2 and stage 3, then we want those to be filtered out at this stage. And we can double check if that's working by clicking on the excluded here, and I'm just going to show that as the table so I can see that all these Pokemon have nulls in both stage 2 and stage 3 if I scroll down. And so these are the Pokemon that we're leaving behind at this point, and that's absolutely fine. We don't want to consider them anymore. Okay, so we rename again those values to be stage 2 values, and we move on to our final join, where this time we do want to make sure that we're doing a left join so that we keep in all of those Pokemon that may not evolve a third time, but at least they evolve once. So we're joining our stage 3 to the name, and again our combat factors join to the combat factors, and we get this 1980 rows that flow through. And finally, we just renamed that stage 3 values to stage 3 values there. And we want to rename the stage 1 values actually at this point to be initial combat power. Okay, so don't worry if your fields aren't in the same order. I've done some reordering in the final step that then kind of Prep always goes back and reorders things throughout the whole flow because it thinks that's how you want to be viewing the ordering of your fields. So you can just manually rearrange these by picking them up and dragging them, for example, to rearrange them. Okay, so now we want to know our final combat power as well. So we need to basically, if there are 3 evolutions, we want to take this field. If there are 2 evolutions, we want to take this field. So let's create that field now. So the formula looks like this. So final combat power. So if is null, stage 3 values, take the stage 2 values, else take the stage 3 values, end. And then we can just get rid of a couple of those fields. Okay, so now comes the time when we need to aggregate our data up. So group by these first 5 fields and then sum these final 2 fields. So we do that in the aggregate step, and we just get this total for the initial combat power and final combat power. Then we want to calculate the percentage difference there, so that is just defined as the final combat power minus the initial combat power over the initial combat power to give us that percentage value. And then finally comes the sorting. So how I chose to arrange this sort. So I went to my combat power increase, and I went to create a calculated field rank. And we want this combat power increase to go in an ascending order rather than a descending order. And then can you see how that also means that our data set down below gets sorted? And then when you hide this field, so we click done and then hide it, then it maintains the ordering. So that's how we can sort in prep. So if I were to, instead of hiding, if I were to, for example, just remove this field, so let me find this, so unhide that field, and then so you see the order is correct for now, but if I were to then remove it, then the order goes back to sorting on a different field. So we need to keep that field in and then just right click and hide that field, and then we keep our ordering. And you can see in the output step as well, where we've got that field there, it's hidden, but the ordering persists. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that challenge. Thanks very much for watching, and thanks again to Games Night Viz and Will for collaborating.